New trade policy will also be great for the American farmer. I love the farmer. Who will now be selling into our home market, the USA, because nobody is going to be able to compete with you. Because there's goods that come in from other countries and companies, they're really in a bad position in so many different ways. They're uninspected. They may be very dirty and disgusting, and they come in and they pour in, and they hurt our American farmers. The tariffs will go on agricultural product coming into America, and our farmers, starting on April 2nd, it may be a little bit of an adjustment period. We had that before when I made the deal with China, $50 billion of purchases, and I said, just bear with me, and they did. They did. Probably have to bear with me again, and this will be even better. That was great. The problem with it was that Biden didn't enforce it. He didn't enforce it. $50 billion of purchases, and we were doing great, but Biden did not enforce it, and it hurt our farmers. But our farmers are going to have a field day right now. So to our farmers, have a lot of fun. I love you too. I love you too.
Hey there, friends. Welcome back to As a Man Thinketh on Yanasa TV. I apologize for not being on here at all last week, but I had a pretty busy week. I was on the road really for the last week and a half, and I've got some great, exciting adventures and projects that we've been working on with our nonprofit, Meet My Neighbor Productions. Some cool things we've been doing with some compost, lots of different groups involved with rebuilding soil in Western North Carolina. And, you know, our rural youth development program earlier this year supported some fundraisers that were able to raise funds for 2 different youth groups. And one of those I've been able to be involved with. And those kids are getting to do some pretty exciting, challenging adventures. I don't think, you know, my wife and I were talking about this today, but we feel like, you know, teenagers, they get into this phase in life where they need to be challenged. They look for those challenges. They want those challenges. Sometimes they don't necessarily say it or recognize it themselves, but once they get out there and they do it, they realize that's what they've been looking for. And when they don't get those challenges, that's when they start getting themselves into trouble and they start going down the wrong path. And we, you know, like programs where youth can go into those programs, learn about agriculture, learn about the outdoors, and our nonprofit supports those groups. So some exciting things that I'll be sharing with you guys. But first of all, I wanted to talk today a little bit about some comments that I've been reading, a lot of news articles that I've been reading, and just share my opinion on some of this stuff, because I don't agree with any politician 100%. I don't understand all of the policies that some of these guys come up with. When we were delivering compost last week, somebody had asked me, geez, it seems like everybody here is just kind of a bucket of different political backgrounds and beliefs. How is it you guys are able to come together to get all this done? And I said, because if we sat around and worried about our politics, we wouldn't be able to get any of this done. We don't care. We're farmers. We're trying to help farmers out. And that's what matters to us, right? Imagine if that was the case with the farm bill, right? We haven't had a farm bill in years. Everybody wants to complain about grants and funding. Most of the funding, what we're missing out on by the cutbacks are funds that have been going to things like $70,000 worth of solar panels on top of a flower farm. Like, I'm sorry, but we've been farming for years without solar panels. It's an unnecessary investment. The farm bill, however, has a lot of money in it that could be helping change the face of agriculture across the United States and help the agricultural industry adjust to changes. But our politicians can't seem to get that passed. They haven't been able to get it passed for years. Keep patching it together, and it's holding up a lot of funds that could be used for things like local processing. That's been a major hurdle for a lot of farmers over the years, is just the ability to get your animals to processing. We actually sent one of our cows to processing a week ago. I'm excited to get that meat back, but because, man, at the grocery store, it is brutal. So anyway, one of the biggest complaints that I hear about are tariffs, these 25% tariffs. As you guys know, we do business in Canada as well, and we have partners in Canada. Our bison tallow products, which we do have more products coming in. They got a little held up the last couple days in customs, but they'll be here. They're now in glass jars. We can only order so many of these at a time because we are a small business. So if you want some place to order now, they'll be going out at the end of the week. But point is, he asked me, he was like, why are these tariffs going in place? Is Trump just trying to make Canadians mad at them? And yes, there's a lot of talk about fentanyl coming over the border. And of course, their response is, well, we've got more cocaine and guns coming across our border from your country. There are issues with the borders on all sides. And I think that our country is doing the best it can to step it up from our side of the border. We're asking the other sides to do the same. But then there are also years and years and years and years and years of unfair trade agreements that go all the way back to World War II, if you wanted to get into it. And it has changed the face of agriculture in the United States. In some ways, for the better. It's made a very small handful of people very rich. In some ways, it's for the worse. And I was looking at this because I don't know the end game with the tariffs. I'm curious, actually, in this particular situation to see where it goes. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I could tell you what's a bad thing, okay? Sourcing out 70 to 100 million eggs into our marketplace. And I'll explain to you why that's a bad thing and why I think that was the dumbest move I've ever heard of. But the tariffs, I'm not so sure that they were such a dumb move. And I am, because we do business with people in Canada, I am concerned about how it impacts those relationships. Personally, I don't think they're going to be around forever. I think this is more of a temporary thing. I think this is a negotiating tool. But in looking at the agricultural trade deficit in the United States, and you guys think about our food supply, and maybe you'll agree with me on this, maybe you won't, but agriculture, our food in the United States is probably one of the worst in the world, okay? We are the most developed country, and yet our people are completely unhealthy. They don't eat enough vegetables, they don't get enough fresh foods. A lot of the stuff that we eat is pure poison, is illegal in a lot of other countries. That's a problem, okay? There's something that has to be fixed within the system. And I'm not saying that that's the intent of the tariffs.
Ancient eras and natural selection have refined and tailored pristine fibers with the resilience for today's days. Evolving beyond the last ice age, bison wool is nature's most dependable activewear. Buffalo Wool Company, 100% proven by nature, 100% American made.
Check out the Buffalo Wool Company collection at yanasatradingco.com.
When in thinking about this, to give you some background on my thought process, I was thinking about an interview with Ray Diablo where he was talking about how he didn't get rich off of making investments in things that he knew would go a certain way. He became rich because of how he managed the unknowns, how he managed the unexpected things that would happen. And that's where kind of when I've been thinking through this, trying to make sense of it all, I've kind of come to the conclusion that I'm sharing with you guys. And you're welcome to disagree with me, comment down below, whatever you want to do. But this is where I'm coming from, is we can't necessarily control, what we can't see or what we don't know is going to happen, but we can mitigate that. And if we mitigate it correctly, if we understand what the possibilities are there, then we should be able to come out on top. And talking to some of the farmers that I have met over the past week or so, and I've been to a lot of farms over the past week or so with Meet My Neighbor Productions, I think a lot of people are on this same wavelength, okay? So when you look at this deficit, you look at our food supply here in the United States, there's a massive deficit. We import 60 billion products more than we export, and we export $118 billion worth of products. Agriculture is the largest industry in the world. In my perspective, food is the one thing you can't go without. It's more valuable than gold. The reason why a lot of farmers are often poor, and there's a handful that make a ton of money off of exports, but for the farmers, the system hasn't worked, okay? You have the largest industry in the world, and they're constantly getting screwed over, in my opinion. They should be making more for the product that they're selling. The marketers, and I teach this to my son in his agricultural management, the marketers are the ones who make the bulk of the money. And they're the ones that are marketing the products overseas. The U.S. government is actually the largest marketer of agricultural products. USAID could literally take grains to another country and completely devastate, by dropping a bunch of grains in that country, devastate the agricultural industry, cornering the market. And we've done that for years. We've manipulated the industry around the world for years. It actually started after World War II when we became a corn economy, okay? After World War II, we wanted to go out and grow more corn to be able to supply Europe, because Europe was devastated. They didn't have enough food. And at the time, the agricultural secretary was like, look, if we do this, we're going to permanently change the face of agriculture in this country. It's going to be hard to come back from unless we take certain rewinding steps once Europe gets, its feet back under them. Otherwise, we're just going to be producing way too many grains, way too many corn, and too much corn. And what ended up happening was he ended up going along with the policy to go ahead and push us to do more corn. And this is where you kind of get into the new Green Deal. Government came in heavily, spending money, getting farmers to transition to this environment where we were shipping a lot of grains overseas. Well, eventually Europe came back and only took a couple years. And then we started having stockpiles of corn across our country, right? Well, what do you do with all this corn? Well, the railroad companies loved it because they were having to just ship this corn all over the place because nobody had a place to store it, right? And they were like, well, this is a good thing for us. And so you had a bunch of early American oligarchs making tons of money off of shipping grain all across the country because nobody had a place to put it. And the government's funding all this because, at that point in time, you had to have subsidies because there wasn't a market for all of this product that we were growing, but we couldn't, we had pushed the farmers to basically transition to this environment, okay? And this is all true. You could go back, you can look up this type of stuff. It actually happened. So we hit this point where we had just a ton of corn, and somebody said, well, how about we establish feedlots for cows, and we could push all the cows into those feedlots and fatten them up with corn. And so that's what we did. We started pumping corn into feedlots, started finding, corn syrup became a big thing. We started remarketing everything, telling you, animal fats and all these things were bad for you so that you would start buying all of these corn products. We started putting corn syrup into, drinks, soft drinks, all sorts of things. We found more products for corn in this country than anybody could possibly ever imagine to make up for this large amount of corn that we had grown to ship overseas. And then, overseas, they didn't want the products because it was hurting their farmers, right? You can't saturate a market like USAID often did. It destroys the agricultural economy in those countries. But if you look back at the history of this country and how we got here, that is how we got here. I mean, we overproduced, and then we created a market to subsidize that market, and another market, ethanol, to the point where we have become a corn economy, which is relatively corny if you think about it. We haven't evolved from that point. When you look at the trade deficit, we are exporting a ton of grains, and then we're importing a ton of fruits and vegetables. If you were to think about your dietary requirements, what you actually need to eat, what you need to survive, the proper nutrition for your body, in order to get away from the corn diet, you would have to eat a lot of these fresh fruits and vegetables. We don't grow enough here in the United States. Part of that also has to do with labor. Labor costs are extremely expensive. I interviewed an onion farmer from Oregon on this channel a couple years ago, and he and I had a discussion about this. When he brings people through on the visa program, the requirements that he has to pay these folks and what he has to provide them are more than a doctor makes in their home country. And then he has to compete, his onions, his produce has to compete with the prices coming out of Mexico, where they don't have any of those regulations. They don't pay their farm workers nearly as much money. A lot of these people come here, work for 6 or 7 months, which is fantastic because most Americans don't want that job. They actually end up paying more for those immigrant workers because they have to go through an agency that it costs a lot of money to bring the workers over here. And part of that is the fact that, we are a developed country. People don't want those kind of jobs here. The other part of it is it's expensive to live in the United States. Our standard of living is much higher than those other countries. And so it costs us so much money to grow anything that's produce, anything that has to be manually harvested, that we just stop doing it. And actually, when you get into, and this is a problem that I had several years ago, and I talked a lot on this channel, when you get into these people who insist that we, eat less meat, we buy all these vegetables and things. I'm like, first of all, do you guys realize where most of those vegetables in the grocery store are coming from? And do you realize the human trafficking involved in creating those products? It's a very inhumane system. It's a very bad, wrong system. And the reason why we're here is simply because we've gotten used to exporting a bunch of grains, importing all these other things, getting cheap food for the consumer. It's a good thing, right? Enslave people in the other part of the world.
Let your friends and family know that you defend the right to farm by buying a leather patch hat from Unasa Trading Co. We also have an array of Defend the Right to Farm t-shirts, Defend the Right to Ranch t-shirts. Make a statement, check out our collections, and support the channel.
So where I'm going with this, though, is look at the opportunities here. We've established the problem, okay? Now look at the opportunities. Trump puts a 25% tariff on everything. Sounds really bad, especially if you want to eat. I've read a lot of articles that are like, just stop eating and you'll survive this, right? But that is why, is because we've gotten used to those cheap products that are coming over the border, where they're using, human slave labor, essentially, in a modern day perspective, it's slave labor, to create those products and get them here so that things are cheap for us and we can spend more money on flat screen TVs. I'm being honest. If you honestly look at the situation, you kind of have to agree with me there. Meanwhile, we're importing $50 billion. So if you look at the import-export, that's like or 60 billion, I think it's like $59 billion is our surplus. So we're shipping out 120 billion, but we're bringing in $180 billion worth of agricultural products. And some of that too, I read an article on this the other day, and it's true. We import a lot of lean beef from other countries like South America, Africa, and then we grind up that lean beef and we mix it in with our fatty beef, because we like our steaks real nice and fatty, so the ground is real nice and fatty. So we mix it together to create not only cheaper ground beef at the grocery store, but something that people can actually eat because it's not so fatty. If we had more grass-fed, I guess, we wouldn't have to do that. But burgers would go up and you wouldn't be able to get a supersize me meal at McDonald's for the price that you can get it at. It's really cheap to get fat in America, if you think about it. It's cheaper than any other country still, because we do these types of things, okay? So, in looking at that deficit though, and thinking about 25% tariff on foods and goods coming into this country, agricultural products, what kind of opportunity does that lend us as farmers? I can't control the tariffs. I can't control the situation. Just like, we lost control of our corn economy years ago. But what can we do seeing, these changes in policy, these changes in regulations? In many ways, it creates opportunity that I don't know is intentional or not. Trump said, have fun to the farmers, right? But the truth is there is an excess of $60 billion a year that we could make here at home. That's $60 billion a year. But we have to be able to produce those products at a competitive price. Now, it may cost the consumer more, and I understand that. And believe me, prices are high as it is because of inflation, which is pumping too much money into the economy. But, eventually that should stabilize. One way to stabilize it is to increase the amount of money and productivity in the United States, the amount of money through productivity, meaning, what we're able to create. The more that people can create, the more people can create money for themselves. And I think by putting these tariffs in place, it creates a unique opportunity for farmers to change their market. Instead of growing a bunch of grains, maybe what we should be doing is looking at, okay, well, if we're expecting produce to go up because of tariffs, maybe we can actually make money growing produce. We're in a food insecure country, believe it or not. If we were to eat what we're supposed to eat, we have to import most of that food. This could actually change that dynamic quite a bit. This gives farmers creativity to be able to go out and say, okay, well, the market, I might not be getting grants from the government because they cut all that off. I might not be getting funding from the Farm Bill because they haven't been able to get that passed in years. But the market itself is going to shift. How can I take advantage of this situation? And that's what I look at. That's what I've been thinking about lately is what can I do on my farm to take advantage of the changing environment, because it creates a significant opportunity for me to make money when all of a sudden produce is going up. It's like when COVID hit. Terrible, terrible event. But local farms started making money. They started piling in money because people couldn't get food at the grocery store. They had to go to their local farmer. So for the small local farmers, it's actually kind of a good thing. And when you talk to them one-on-one and you kind of go through the same conversation, they agree. Now, for some of the bigger guys, the guys who receive 95% of any funds that come out of the government, really, because they're subsidized on the big grains and everything else, it's probably not the best deal. But I will say in our travels, we've worked with farms on all different sizes, so all different commodities. And I've seen a lot of young people coming into this industry, and they're changing their long-term family practices as they take over the farm. They're interested in soil health. They're interested in things that, it's not that their parents and grandparents didn't just messed up or something like that. Okay, a lot of the knowledge that we have now, a lot of the knowledge that we've developed, either it wasn't practical to implement in the past and be competitive, or it just wasn't, we didn't know a whole lot about it. Now we have a lot more science, we have a lot more research behind a lot of our practices. And I've seen, guys take corn farms that traditionally grew corn and sunflower, which aren't good oils for you, and they've literally, taken out those crops, replenish the fields by putting bison on them. And, within a few years of, running bison, which is a very healthy meat, it's not a commodity yet. I hope it never becomes one, but, and the tallow products we sell, they don't clog your pores like beef tallow does or can, but they've changed their crops over to these rotational grazing plans and done wonders with their soil health. Their productivity has gone up. The amount of money that they're able to make per acre has gone up. And these are things, we get stuck sometimes in a way of doing things. And I think in agriculture across the board, we kind of get stuck in dependence on subsidies. And that's one of the things that I think that they're trying to do is reduce the dependency on it. And I don't necessarily think that, the thought process has necessarily gone into it saying, hey, look at, the opportunities that our farmers could find if we let the market adjust. And honestly, people talk about recession and stuff. I've said on this channel for years, the economy just can't steamroll ahead by pumping more money and throwing more money into it constantly and avoid a recession. Like, recessions are healthy things. This economy has gotten out of control, especially with inflation. It's never going to go back to where it was. But if you can correct that with a recession, it's going to create more opportunities. And everybody hates the recession part. Everybody loves the opportunities that come out of it. I kind of view these tariffs as opportunities for American farmers to adjust to the market. And like I said, there's $60 billion out there that we haven't tapped into as farmers in America. And part of that is because of the competition. Part of that is because of the unfair trade agreements that we've lived with for years, because honestly, it's part of how we manipulate other countries. Every day, more and more Americans are waking up to the fact that our society is simply unhealthy. We've been being fed poisons and being told to put poisons on our body by corporate America for years. A lot of the things that we've been told were bad for us, like animal fats, are actually good for our bodies. Your skin is the largest organ of your body. If you want to take care of yourself and you want to help nurse yourself back to health, it's important to take care of every aspect of your body, which is why on Yanasa Trade & Co., we're pleased to offer you guys bison tallow lotions and creams. These bison tallow lotions and creams are amazing. They're not made by a big corporation. They're made by a homesteader, just like you guys, our friends out of Canada, Dr. Nathaniel and Susan Ostashowski. If you've watched our travels over the years filming Native, the prodigies of an icon, we've visited numerous bison ranches and farms and parks across the entire continent of North America. And these are some really great people who have come up with some really great products, and you can buy them on Yanasa Trade & Co. and support this program and support your health all at the same time. Get yourself some bison tallow products from Yanasa Trade & Co. and support this program and support other small farmers like yourself. We hope to continue to grow our product lines on Yanasa Trade & Co. and I hope you continue to support us. When we look around the world, we just sent carrier fleets over to Iran. We haven't been able to negotiate an end to the Ukraine war. There have been conversations of it getting close, but I mean, the reality is there are other countries besides Ukraine and Russia involved in that war, and we would have to convince every single one of them to get out of that war. And some of those countries, I don't think we will ever convince to get out of that war. So when you look around the world, it's a very unstable environment, and we aren't. In my opinion, we aren't the strong force anymore. I think the combination of China and Russia is something seriously to contend with. You get on their bad side and they've got some power, okay? There's definitely, from what I have seen around the world and what I read and understand, there's definitely a big power switch going on. And if things get bad, you know, what happens to all those trade agreements? How do we get all this produce into our country to feed our people? We do need to have more productivity here at home that's diversified, a diversified agricultural economy. And so when I was looking at all this stuff and I was thinking about it and I was thinking through it, I thought, well, you know, it actually makes it worth my while to grow some extra vegetables, to put up another greenhouse, to be able to do these things and take it to market, because the market's shifting. Things are getting a little more expensive for the consumer. I might be able to offer some people a break from the grocery store, or I might be able to break even, or at least, you know, make some money at doing that. And doing so, you know, that puts more money into my local economy, because then I'm spending that. I'm spending it, you know, on farm equipment. I'm spending it at the local feed store, the local markets who are employing people. It just shifts. The shift is hard, but the shift could be really good, but it depends on us, okay? Because there is no farm bill giving us direction right now, which maybe that's a good thing. I mean, there's some funding that I'd love to see unfrozen, but the reality is there's a shift, right? And that shift creates opportunities for farmers across the board, opportunities that just haven't even been there, opportunities that I hear people complaining about on a daily basis in the agricultural community could be there within 6 months to a year. Those opportunities could be there. But that's also why I think importing $70 to $100 million worth of eggs was a really dumb idea. If you look at the egg prices, they shot up because Biden went out and killed 150 million chickens. This is government manipulation of pricing, right? You kill 150 million chickens and that's what happens. I don't think that response to HPI was effective. I don't think it worked. I think that HPI is a problem, but, you know, honestly, I've seen chickens get sick. You remove them from the flock, the rest of the flock is fine. It's kind of, you know, there was an extremity there. And it drove egg prices up. Now, eggs are actually kind of at the basis of a lot of our food system. That, and they're a highly nutritional food that you've normally been able to get to relatively inexpensively, okay? So I think that there's a lot of reason to drive egg prices up. Now, to offset that quickly, you could go out and import 70 to 100 million eggs and drop the price in half, which is essentially what happened overnight. From when Trump announced that, wholesale prices of eggs dropped almost 50%. So egg problem solved for the consumer, but major missed opportunity, okay? Egg prices were at all-time highs. Suddenly you could get more producers, more small farm producers, to start producing more eggs. And possibly, I'm not a genius on this stuff, but possibly more smaller flocks are a way of combating HPAI. A lot of people over the last several years have been very concerned about the backyard farmer and, how they could pass bird flu on without recognizing it and cause problems for the bigger farms. But I think that if we allowed the market to fix the egg prices over time, what we would have seen is more diversification among small farmers. We would have seen more people taking opportunity with the higher egg prices. No, it's not great for the consumer, but in the long run, it's the best thing for the consumer because it creates more consumer choice. Okay, so I don't look at policies from any politician as they come out and think, oh, that was good. I'm going to support everything this guy does. Sometimes I think there are some really dumb decisions. I think the last time we had trade wars, there were a lot of things that I just completely disagreed with, and I don't necessarily agree with what's going on out there today. But I've also come to the conclusion that I can't control it. I have no control over that situation. But what I can do is look at the opportunities, and I can adjust my business model to take advantage of those opportunities. And in reality, that opportunity is a $60 billion trade deficit. That's a lot of money to be spread out amongst American farmers who can make it work, especially if their prices become more competitive with the slave labor that's coming from other countries. I really, it frustrates me sometimes when I hear people, talking about how inhumane animal agriculture is, and we should eat more fruits and vegetables. And most of these people don't support their local farmer because it's too expensive for their diet to go to their local farmer. So they end up going to the grocery store, buying fresh produce year-round from around the globe, yet it's basically coming from one portion of the globe. And that portion of the globe is responsible for 90% of the human trafficking in the world. And most of it goes into agricultural production. I mean, it's insane. You want to talk about being humane? That's not humane. A balanced diet is humane. Buying from, people who take care of their animals, knowing a little bit about where your food comes from, what its background is, not just being oblivious to it all, is being more humane. But I think that there's significant opportunities here for the farmers. I do have some other videos and conversations to talk about on this channel, including some eminent domain issues, an entire farming community that the U.S. Forest Service or Fish and Wildlife tried to literally flood out of existence. There's been a whole lot to talk about, but as I've said at the beginning of this video, I have been on the road lately. I need a new truck or something, but I have been on the road just, meeting a lot of great farmers and, helping some teenage boys learn a little bit about survival, a little bit about independence. And, that stuff is an honor to be a part of. And, sometimes I just fall behind on my As a Man Thinketh updates, but stay tuned as we go forward into the year and we see how some of these things unfold. Like I said, I don't know if it's going to be a good thing or a bad thing, but I see the opportunity. And I think that that's what we need to focus on, is opportunity. We need to stop complaining about everything that goes awry or doesn't go in the direction we were hoping it would, and start looking at the opportunities that these situations create. And I don't think that people are going to come out and tell you what the opportunity is. You have to kind of look at the market and say, maybe I should grow some more fruits and vegetables. Maybe I should, hatch a few more chickens and raise some more eggs. But this is where, the egg thing just ticks me off, because it takes a while for the farmers to adjust. It takes a while for the market to adjust. And I think that if the market adjusted to it, in the long term, we'd all be better off as consumers. But, government has to manipulate everything, has to play a hand in it, has to look like a hero to people, when really true heroism would be a little less hands-on, in my opinion. Anyway, guys, stay tuned, and thanks for supporting our channel. Thanks for supporting our storefront, and thank you for supporting Meet My Neighbor Productions. The things that you see us do for other people on this channel is done by you. We're sharing it with you because we want you to be able to see what your contributions are helping us do.